Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you. Let's get started. I'm Karen Demarest, Vice President for Community Impact at the Community Foundation, Sonoma County. Look at all you wonderful people filing in. It's great to see you all. We're going to start. You're here for the Community Grants Workshop, and we're going to start by first introducing the team who, and it's a combined team because we've got the Community Foundation and the Sonoma County Vintners Foundation here. So I'll just say Ariana, then Julia, then Annette, Yesenia, and Obiamaka, and Caitlin. Just all give your quick introductions.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you. My name is Ariana Diaz de Leon, and I'm Program Director for the Community Impact Team at Community Foundation, Sonoma County.
Morning, everyone. My name is Julia Conover. I'm the Director of Donor Relations and Philanthropy for Sonoma County Vintners Foundation.
Good morning. My name is Obiamaka Pistoni. I'm the CFO for the foundation with Sonoma County Vintners.
How about Annette and Yesenia?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Annette Williams, and I'm Community Impact Coordinator.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yesenia, and I am the intern for the Community Impact Team.
So that's just a little glimpse of all the people who are behind the scenes making this grants program happen. And we're just grateful to all of you who have arrived, and you can put your name in the chat. Could you just raise your hand? You can do it physically or not, if you've been to one of these grant workshops before. So a lot of new people. That's really great. Well, welcome, and we're going to go through a lot of information here. The first part, and Ariana, you can go to the next slide. Introductions. We sure wish that we could have you all introduce yourselves out loud, but that's for a different meeting. We're going to give you a little introduction to the Vintners Foundation because they are distinct from the Community Foundation and do such important work in our community. Then I'm going to take you through an overview of what the funding priorities are for this year, what criteria we use to make our decisions, and then we'll have a Q&A section on that part of the grants program. Then we'll hand it to Ariana, and she will take you through the more technical side of things, how to apply, how to go online and do all of that. So two kind of distinct focuses of the workshop. If lots of people have gone onto our system and applied for grants before, you are welcome to leave halfway through, and I'll give you that reminder when we get there. All right, let's go to the next slide. Oh, by the way, if you have questions all along, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be keeping our eye on it and you know, answer your questions as we go along. So I'm going to hand it over to Julia so she can introduce you to the Sonoma County Vintners Foundation.
Wonderful. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here and joining us for this workshop. I just kind of wanted to provide a little bit of background information about our partnership with the Community Foundation and kind of what we've done over the last many years. So we were founded in 1944, as you can see there, and we have raised over $37 million in our foundation since our inception. And we've partnered with the Community Foundation for many years. And over the last 2 years, we've brought in more than $5 million through our partnership with the Community Foundation. We've helped over 90 nonprofit organizations get funding that they need. And we've been able to activate our emergency relief fund, which was a newer one that we saw a need for in our community. And, you know, we're just really thrilled to be able to have this partnership with the Community Foundation and our community grants program to be able to get funding to many organizations that need it the most. So it's just kind of a broad, quick overview there. But if you guys have any specific questions about this partnership, either myself or Karen are happy to answer any questions that you might have. So Karen, back over to you.
Thank you, Julia.
Of course.
you know, what I think is so exciting about this partnership is the fact that the vintners, we both get to be working in our areas of strength. The vintners are really great at pulling together donors from all over the country, even the world, come to the auction that they host in September. And that's where all these funds are raised. And it's not just the foundation itself, but it's all our entire vintner community who contributes to the auction. And that's all those funds go back out into the community through these grants programs. So, and then our role is we step in and we just help them run the grants process so that we do what we do best, they do what they do best. And I think it really serves the community well. All right, next slide. So this year we're focusing on the community grants program entirely. It's the one program that's going grants program for the year with the vintners, and community grants is designed to be able to address the most pressing current needs. So each year the criteria kind of shifts somewhat to address what we understand to be a pressing need. And we make it broadly accessible. So lots of organizations have the opportunity to receive funds from this grants program. This year, because we did some research on the typical size of grant that we're able to fund, we have made the maximum $10,000. We've had several years where the maximum that you could apply for was higher, but in the end, we did a lot of partial grant making so that we could, because there were so many great applications and we wanted to fund them all as much as we could. So we would do partial grants. What happens then, partial grants means you've written an application that you're not getting full funding for, and you have to make changes based on that. So we'd rather set the maximum where we expect to be making the grant. So that maximum this year is $10,000. Our funding priorities remain the same in terms of focus areas. We'll be focusing on arts and culture, education, the environment, and health and human services. So again, very broad grants program. Next slide. So I'm going to dive into the really specifics of each of these funding areas, and keeping in mind that when you do apply for this grant, you are applying for one of these focus areas. In fact, when you go onto the website to apply, you will select one of these for your application. And we've often had the question, well, how do I know I'm an arts organization, but I'm providing education? Well, it's the primary objective of what you're trying to accomplish with this grant is what you would apply for. So in my example, you might be an education organization providing some arts. Your arts is what you are doing. You are trying to address the arts and healing. That's what you would apply for. So that's a kind of a question in the weeds, but you'll understand it as we go. So pay really close attention to this, because this is the first and number one thing that we use to make decisions about the grants is, do you align with these, does your program align with these funding priorities? So Ariana, I'm going to hand it to you to talk about this one.
Thank you, Karen. And in the second part of this presentation, if you haven't applied before, if this is your first time applying, that's where we're going to dive a bit deeper into the 4 separate applications and how you can find the one you want to apply for. Okay, so we're starting with the Health and Human Services funding priority. This is the funding priority where we receive the highest number of applications, and that's likely because it's such a broad funding priority, and there's a lot of needs around this. So this funding priority comes from the understanding that with the pandemic, with the recent fires, with everything that's happened in Sonoma County, it's impacted people's mental health and the community well-being at large, but it's specifically created challenges for those who are already vulnerable prior to those disasters and prior to what our community has experienced. So this funding is targeting programs or projects that support the fundamental needs of our most vulnerable community members, which could include mental, behavioral health, housing, and food insecurity. And one thing to know is people experiencing homelessness is not called out in here specifically, but it is part of the housing and housing insecurity scope.
Okay, next is education. So we're fortunate in Sonoma County to have some pretty powerful data around what our young people need to thrive. And the two reports that we reference to make the decision about the focus area here is Youth Truth. And if you're not familiar with that report, it is on our website, the Community Foundation website. It has really powerful data directly from students. And then we also have the Ready report, which First Five produces, which is all about kindergarten readiness. So looking at both of those data points, we have decided to focus this year education on children, youth, and their families, increasing their opportunity for early literacy skills and to address the ongoing digital divide. So there's two kind of focus areas there. You don't need to have a program that does both of those things. You can apply for either one, but two areas that we know are great needs in the community right now. Back to you, Ariana.
Now, the environment funding priority is very similar to the funding priorities for previous years. And this is in recognizing that wildfires continue to be a risk for Sonoma County, and disaster mitigation is critical to helping reduce that risk and helping to keep our communities as safe as possible. So the funding will target disaster mitigation projects that seek to address the impacts of wildfires, primarily through the reduction of fire fuels. And so those approaches can include, but that's not limited to, prescribed grazing, prescribed burns, manual vegetation management. And in addition, one thing that is important about disaster mitigation and the ongoing risk of wildfires is that it is creating an opportunity for careers in the future, sustainable, well-compensated careers. So programs that bring in a workforce or training component to their request, particularly if that is reaching youth, if that is reaching individuals who otherwise wouldn't have access to this, those will be prioritized.
And then finally, arts and culture. We know the arts really play an important role in addressing mental health issues and issues of well-being, and that can be a real form of healing. And we certainly in our community have faced our fair share of disasters, and then with a pandemic on top of it. We're going to target this year arts programs that as a first priority, arts programs that are specifically using the arts to address community healing or individual healing. I did have a question about this from an arts organization that just presents the arts, but does not have a specific focus on healing. And they said, you know, we know that even coming to see a concert, is a form of healing, and that is true. But in terms of this grants program, we will initially be targeting those organizations that are using arts as a healing modality. If there aren't enough applications, then the next priority would be arts organizations that are just providing arts as a form of creative expression. So it's a little, there's different opportunities. And really what I say is look at what you're doing. Look at the application, the questions on the application. And Caitlin has just put a couple of helpful links in the chat where you can find the Youth Truth data and where you can find the grant application information on our website. All of this is outlined on our website. And in fact, when you get there, and Ariana is going to talk about this a little bit more in the second half, there are links to pull down a Word document of all the questions. And that's another way for you to review and say, yeah, I think if I answer these questions, I have a strong case for how our program aligns with these criteria. Okay, next slide, please. So just in short, the funding priorities are digital divide and early literacy for education, disaster mitigation for the environment, healing in the arts, and fundamental basic human needs for health and human services. So typically we do receive a lot of applications for these grants programs. You can go to the next slide. And so we have to have some criteria by which we make our decisions. We do strive to have a higher ratio of yeses to nos. And we work very hard to keep that at a percentage that keeps you from having to complete applications that don't get funded. So we're looking first and foremost for applications that align very strongly with those priority areas, as I said earlier. In your application, you have an opportunity to describe the goals that you're wanting to achieve. And those are goals that you achieve in the grant period, which is a 1-year grant period. So if you're able to really clearly define some of the goals that you're trying to accomplish, that really strengthens your application. If you can show that you're going to be able to implement that program within the year's time, that's helpful. And we are always centering equity in these grants programs, and the Vintners are very, very committed to diversity, equity, inclusion. And so we're looking for opportunities that your grant will help expand access to whatever you're trying to accomplish to a diverse sector of the community. Next slide. So there's some fundamental eligibility criteria. So you do have to apply as a 501c3. You can apply through a fiscal sponsor. And maybe when we get to that point, Ariana, we can even ask if anyone thinks they're going to apply for a fiscal sponsor. We can go into that a little bit more deeply, but that is the first question you'll be asked. And if you do not have a 501c3 fiscal sponsor number, you will be diverted out of the application. This is not a grants program for scholarships or annual funds or capital campaigns or any kind of fundraising events or conferences. We don't fund political or religious purposes, or if your program is serving people who live outside of Sonoma County, that would not be eligible. If your organization is based outside of Sonoma County and you actually serve people in the county, then you would be eligible if there's a percentage of your clients. There's some organizations based in Marin, for example, that do serve a large portion of clients in Sonoma County. Those are eligible. One other question that we often get that isn't here on the slide is, can my organization apply for submit two different applications? And the answer is more than likely no. There are a few large organizations in Sonoma County, like Community Action Partnership, for example. I don't know if anyone here is representing them more. They do housing work, they do education, they run Head Start, they have a real large breadth of programming that even straddles different priority areas. In that case, it would be likely that you would be able to submit an application. If you do have that question, it's always good to ask us first. Just send us an email. I think that's it for those slides. So in terms of those questions, any funding priority questions, anything about the overview, we will take those questions now. And all you have to do is, if you raise your hand, if you use it, since we have a lot of people, and Ariana, maybe we can just take the slideshow off, and that it would be easier to see people. If you use the icon to raise your hand, that's usually works better. Does anybody see any? I mean, we were so good. Did you see one, Ariana?
No, but I just wanted to say, if you're still thinking about it, we will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the second part of the presentation. So you can ask questions then, or you can always just reach out to us individually.
I'm trying to think of, oh, there's a couple other things I wanted to say as well. So, we have a certain amount of money to give away each year. And we know that Health and Human Services is usually the bulk of the application. So what we do is once you submit an application, we break out the amount of funding available based on the percentages of applicants. So it does get divided among the four priority areas based on the number of applications in that priority area. So that is quite fair in that way. Let's see. Access to the PowerPoint. Yes. Caitlin, do we put it on the website, or how do we do that?
Yeah, we definitely can. We'll have the recording of the presentation as well.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I guess we could just go ahead and put it on that same webpage where you can find all the information about the grant application. We can certainly post that there. And the grant period is 1 year, and it starts in June, right?
And then it goes through the end of May.
Great. Let's see. Oh, this is a good question around like what can the funding be applied to? So we know that when you apply for a grant, it's probably going to be staffing that is going to make that possible. So we don't consider staffing a kind of overhead. You could have the bulk of the funding be applied to staff. You can also use 10% of the funds for overhead being copying and lights and all of that, phones. So, you will be asked to submit a program budget, and that budget gives you an opportunity to kind of break it down. Don't feel like you can't apply most of that to staffing. I think those are all the questions I see in the chat right now. Why don't I go ahead and I can hand it to you, Ariana. You know what I find so fascinating? Like when we're in person, this is when we get a lot of questions. So please don't be shy to ask your questions. But if you feel like you had enough information and you know how to apply for a grant on our online system, there is no surprises here. There are no surprises here. So feel free to take back 35 minutes of your day. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it to Ariana, and she's going to take you through the application process. Oh, wait, Brittany has a question.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
I am wondering if the grant proposal has to be based on a specific project, or if it can support operating funds for a program that is already doing something in line with the priorities.
Great question. You do not have to like come up with a brand new program to apply for. If you have a current program, and that's actually preferable considering the size of the grant is pretty small, $10,000. We are excited when there is a program that you're already implementing that fits with this grant criteria, and that we are able to provide support to potentially, increase the number of people or just help you do this program. So we have in the past provided general operating support using this grant for just straight up general operating, not programmatic work. But we found that one of the things that we do is we tell your story. When the vintners get together with all the donors under the tent at the auction, your story is part of what inspires them to continue to give. So the programmatic story is much more powerful. And so we're really targeting this year programmatic work. But by all means, if you already have something going, use that. Good question. Thanks, Brittany. All right.
Okay, so I do just want to reiterate, if you would like to hop off right now because you've already used our portal and you understand how to apply, we won't be offended. You're welcome to. And then if you do come up on any technical issues or you need support along the way, you can always reach out to us. Okay, so now we're going to be in the second half of the presentation covering the application process, and that will include how do you apply, the application components, where to go if you need technical support, And then we'll be covering the timeline, which has some important deadlines. And finally, we'll wrap up by opening up for Q&A again. So to apply, the first step is to navigate to the Community Foundation's website, which is sonomacf.org. Right at the very first page, you're going to see a button to click on the right top corner that says Grantee Login. And if you click on that button, then you will be taken to our portal system. And you'll see the logon page. And on this page, if you have an existing account, you can use your email address, your password, and then you can just log right in and you'll be at your dashboard. If you forgot your password, there's a link right here, a blue hyperlink that you can click on, and that will allow you to reset your password so that then you're able to log in. If you don't have an account and this is your first time using our portal, then you would click the Create New Account button right here. And so that means that you will have to register your organization. So there is a very brief page that you have to fill out first before you can access the portal. This asks for some basic information like your organization's name, your tax ID, your mailing address, information about the person that is registering the organization, and then information about the executive director. Once you submit this, you're going to receive a confirmation email. And that confirmation email will let you know that you now have an account and you can log in to the portal. And one thing to note, I am going to go into this further later on, but if you're applying with a fiscal sponsor, then the organization registering for an account needs to be the fiscal sponsor, not the organization being sponsored. Now, once you've created an account or once you've logged in, you're going to see your dashboard. And your applicant dashboard has some basic information, a profile of your organization with the information you've provided. You can also see historical requests that you've submitted in the past and your active requests that are current. So any request that you've submitted to Community Foundation Sonoma County or the Vintners Foundation through our portal, you will be able to see here. And so to apply, to find these 4 applications, you would click on this button that's right up at the top that says apply. And that will take you to a page where you can see all 4 of the separate applications. So as Karen had mentioned earlier, we do have a separate application for each of the funding priorities. So it's not the same one. And it's really important that you are clicking on the correct one and submitting the correct application. So you'll be able to find them just by scrolling down, and then you can see all 4 there. And it's important to pay attention to the funding priority right here. This one is education. You can also find the information about the funding priority within the summary content. And this summary includes information about the timeline. That's just really helpful to have up front. It has the deadline, when the applicants can expect to know about the decisions, the grant period, and then who to contact if you have any questions. And if you're not quite ready to apply, if you don't want to hit the apply button yet, but you do want to see what the questions are, you can click on this preview button down below, and that will allow you to view all the questions without applying yet. And once you are ready to apply, you just click on the blue button up here, and that's how you start your application. Now, I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about the application components. There are narrative questions for each of the 4 applications, and those can be found as, well, the entire applications can be found as Word documents on the Community Grants webpage. So some of the feedback that we've received in previous years is that it's helpful to have the applications as Word documents just available publicly, because some organizations prefer to work on a Word document first, so you can do your spell check, so you can share it with colleagues, and then copy the information into the online portal. So that's perfectly fine to do if that's your preference. we encourage you to use that method. You can find the Word documents on the webpage right now, so you could download them and start working on that. But I do want to just share a note of caution. So on the Word documents, you will see a character limit for each of the responses. But the Word document won't stop you from going beyond that character limit. In the online application, you also have the character limit, and it will stop you from going further. It'll give you an alert. So I just want you to be cognizant of that character count in the Word document so that you don't write more than is allowed. And then when you copy it into the online application, it won't let you submit all of the information that you had written. So just please be aware of that. We do ask for an organization and a project budget for all 4 of the applications. We don't have a template for the organization budget, so we ask you to submit it in the format that you have available to you. You can just upload it as an attachment to the application. And for the project budget, we do have a template that's available. However, it's optional, so you don't have to use it. You can find it within the application itself. There's a hyperlink that will take you to the program budget, and you can also find it on the community grants webpage. And both of those can just be uploaded right into the application. We also ask for a board of directors list to be provided. We don't have a template for that, so you're welcome to upload it in whatever format you already have, and just upload it as an attachment to the application. Now, we also have an additional attachments section, and this was added based on feedback from prior applicants, because sometimes there's something that you want to add, but there isn't room in the application to include that. So if you feel like there's something critical that you want to upload and make sure that is included in the application, you can use this additional attachment section to do so. But it is optional, so if you leave it blank, that's perfectly okay as well. Now on to the fiscal sponsorship. So this usually only pertains to a few people, but it's important to cover because it is a bit more complex in terms of applying. So for the fiscal sponsorship, it's important to know that the Vintners Foundation can only provide grants to organizations that have a 501c3 status. And that 501c3 status is designated by the IRS. So if your organization does not have a 501c3 status, you can still apply, but you're going to need to have a formal fiscal sponsorship to be able to do so. So your fiscal sponsor organization will have to have a 501c3, and they will be the organization that is applying and that will be receiving the funds on your behalf. So when the fiscal sponsor applies, it would be the fiscal sponsor's information that's entered into the very first registration page when you're creating an account. It has to be their tax ID, because that's what's connected to the 501c3 status, and the information of the fiscal sponsor. There is an opportunity within the application for the organization being sponsored to enter their information, and that's what's on the screen right now. So within the application, there's an option to select that you're applying with a fiscal sponsor, and then you'll be able to complete the information that's listed here. We do ask for an organization budget, both from the organization being sponsored and the fiscal sponsor. So you will need to upload two. And you will also need to upload the board of directors list for the fiscal sponsor, and then the board of directors list or the advisory board for the organization that's being sponsored. So it does require a little bit more work. And then finally, we have a community foundation fiscal sponsorship form that we ask you to complete. And that just formalizes, the relationship between the fiscal sponsor and the sponsee for our purposes, so that we can see that the agreement exists, both of the parties sign, and it's just a one-page document that you then upload into the application. There are there is one question on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the application. And this is something that we've done in the past just to inform the vintners and inform ourselves about what's taking place in the community and with our nonprofits regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. So this is entirely optional. Any information that you submit into this question will not be used for the decisions, but it is helpful to keep us informed. So for this year, we are aware that there are nonprofit organizations that have started a diversity, equity, inclusion, racial justice process internally or in some format. And that can come with a lot of challenges, and it can require quite a bit of support to be able to either begin or continue. So what we'd like to learn from all of you is what challenges is your organization experiencing, either in beginning this process and continuing this process, and what support would be helpful for your organization to continue on this journey. So that could include having access to a peer network where other organizations who are going through a similar journey can all kind of come together and share, or access to consultants or board trainings. So it really is open-ended. It's a narrative question, and it's really meant to inform us and allow us to understand what the needs are in these areas. Now, for technical support and tips, there are a couple of documents that are already available, and we recommend you take a look at. One of them is the frequently asked questions document that is on the community grants webpage. And this is a document that we've put together based on questions, general questions that have been asked over the years. And so we have the responses on there. And it's really helpful for, even if you don't have a question in mind, it's helpful to review the document because there might be something on there that you hadn't thought of previously. There's also a grant application portal guide. That's more of a technical document to get a little bit more guidance on how to access our portal, what buttons to click. That one is also available, and it's hyperlinked on the community grants webpage. But of course, if you'd prefer to talk to someone instead of reading a document for technical assistance, you can also contact Annette, and her email address and phone number are on the screen. Now, there is a save feature on the application, and it's automatic, so your application automatically saves. But there is a feature there for you if you want to go ahead and just push that button. And just so you know, you don't have to complete the application all at once. You can log back out, come back in, your draft will be there so that then you can continue working on it at a different time. And then finally, there are a couple of browsers that we recommend for accessing our portal. Chrome, Firefox, Safari, all of those work really great. You can use any browser. Internet Explorer will also work, but it's just not as recommended as these three. So the application is, all four of the applications are open now. So they launched February 14, so you can go into the portal today and start your application. There are two different deadlines, and we stagger them for a couple of reasons. One is to not overwhelm the system, but another one is because we tend to get a lot of questions as the deadline's near. And we want to make sure that we're available to answer your questions before you have to hit that submit button. So by staggering it, we're able to prioritize the ones that are due March 4 first, and then we can focus on the ones that are due March 11. So Health and Human Services and Arts and Culture, those applications are all due Friday, March 4th by 5 p.m. And then Environment and Education are due by Friday, March 11th, also at 5 p.m. And we anticipate that we'll be able to notify the applicants of the decisions by mid-May. And then finally, the grant period is from June of this year through end of May of next year. And the request that you're submitting, the funding, does have to be expended within this grant period. So that is important to keep in mind. And then finally, if you have questions about the criteria or the eligibility, you are welcome to reach out to me. My email address is up here. My phone is here. I'll drop these in the chat as well so that you can just copy those. And you can also reach out to Karen. If you have questions about the technical side of the online application, then you're welcome to reach out to Annette, and her email address and her phone are also up here.
So Ariana, there's one question about, or do they submit their entire budget for the organization or the particular project budget?
So it is both. We are asking for the organization budget and the project budget, and there's separate areas in the application to submit those. So we do want to see the project budget for the funding that you're requesting, how that's planned to be expended, but then also your organization budget is required.
Great. And then this is an important question. Sarah asked about, her predecessor applied, she doesn't have access. So Annette offered to help out. But if anybody else has that question, is it something that you do need to reach out to Annette for?
Yes. Annette is your go-to for that. And don't be shy. If there is something that you can't access in the portal, or there's been staff changes and that there's content in there that you need, feel free to just reach out to Annette. She's very helpful with all of that.
She sure is. All right. Are there any other questions? I have a few other comments just to make that I thought of as we were talking. But go ahead and put your questions in the chat, and I'm just going to fill in a couple of other details. One, there is a final question at the end of the application that asks for feedback. We really actually do pay attention to that feedback, and we have made significant changes because of your feedback. So if you have something that you'd like us to know about your experience using the application, please let us know. We have had questions around character counts, and actually where we hear that is in the feedback section. And we often hear two opposing opinions about the character counts. Some people say, thank you so much. We really love that you just limit the amount of information that you're requiring from us. Some people say, it's so hard to squeeze everything we have to say into these character counts. Why do you have character counts? So we try to come up with an in-between solution by offering what we feel is probably the best use of your time to, become concise in your answers. You don't have to fill out the full character count amount, but when we feel that when we read a concise answer, we have a better understanding of what you're trying to say. But some people feel like they need to give as much information as they possibly can, that that's what we're searching for. That is not what we're searching for. We really want you to articulate what you're trying to get explained to us in as few words as necessary to do that. So that's why we have character counts. Some people have asked, well, can I apply for the same program we applied for last year? So if you were successful and you got a grant and the priority, the overview of that priority area is still the same, yes, we're not saying, oh, you have to come up with something brand new every year. But if you were declined, there's probably a reason for that. So I would say that might be something to consider. Maybe not a good fit with the program. Partial awards. In other words, if I requested the full 10,000, might you decide to award as a smaller amount based on several factors? It's a great question. We have given partial grants many times over the past years. However, what we come to understand is by giving partial grants, that puts a burden back on you because you've applied for a program that you expected to receive a certain amount for, and you've set goals for that, and you've conveyed those goals to us. We will be holding you accountable to those goals, but we don't give you enough funding to accomplish that. So we're actually have lowered that the maximum of $10,000 in order to avoid giving partial grants. If it comes down to it, will we need to give partial grants? Potentially, but we would always make adjustments in our expectations of your accomplishment of that program based on the amount of funding we're providing. But our hope is that this year we will not be making many partial grants. Do we give favors? Do we like new grant recipients, past grant recipients? This is a very large grants program. We usually receive over 100 applications. And so there will be people who have received grants multiple years. There will be people who have never received a grant before. We don't give a preference there. We're looking for strong fit with the grant application, with the grant priorities. I feel like there was one other thing. Oh, just about contacting us. So we really strive to give you as much information as you need to be able to make a decision about whether or not you're going to apply, and then go ahead and apply in our, in the workshop, in the materials that we provide. But if you feel like you've come up against a question that is just not answered through everything that we've provided for you, feel free to reach out. What we can't do is tell you whether or not we think you're going to be a good fit, because that we don't know until we've actually read your full application. But if you have some questions that would really help you move forward with the application, just feel free to reach out. The best way to do that is through email, because we're a small but mighty team, and we're running other grants programs at the same time. Oh, that reminds me of another question. Yes, you can always apply for community foundation grants and vintners grants. We operate very separately. We are just providing a service to them to run the grants program, but our grants are considered, we make decisions about them and even fund them very, very differently, separately.
And I don't recall if I mentioned this as part of the fiscal sponsorship piece, but if you are applying with a fiscal sponsor, I just encourage you to reach out to either Annette or myself and just connect, so we can make sure that you have everything that you need, you understand what you need to submit where. It's easier to do that up front. So please reach out to us if you know that you're going to be applying with a fiscal sponsor.
And one thing I'd say about the application process, we really do try to make it as streamlined as possible. And if you do apply and you don't get funded, we make every effort to tell you why. And so we will reach out to you. If you aren't funded, we'll reach out to you. We'll explain the process, what the decision was. But even if you don't get funded, it is helpful. I wouldn't say don't apply, do not apply if you're not a good fit. That's save your time. But if you're a good fit and it is not quite competitive enough against the other applications, it's still very valuable for us to read and learn about your programming. We really do a deep analysis of the applications. We share that with the vintners, with their entire grants committee. We write a full summary of what you have applied for, and it's an education process to us too. So it's not all bad if you don't get funded. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, you get 9 minutes. Get 9 minutes back in your day. Don't go right on email. Give yourself the 9 minutes. Go outside, take a big breath of fresh air. Nurture yourself. Sing a song. It's so healing. I've taken up the ukulele. I highly recommend it. Okay, thank you, everybody. You're wonderful. Thanks for all the work you do. Thank you for being with us this morning. And we look forward to reading your applications.